Good Stewards by J.E. Dillard. Chapter 4 The Stewardship of Time. The time is short. 1 Corinthians 7:20. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Psalm 90, verse 12. Redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Ephesians 5:16. Islam differs there that you don't revile time. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. Ecclesiastes 3:1-8. 1. An appreciation of time. 1. Time is a gift. Seneca said, "Nothing is ours except time." But certainly Seneca knew that time is ours only to use. It is given to us for a season. We cannot create a moment. We cannot borrow a moment. We cannot destroy a moment. But we may use or misuse or waste time. All of the time we have is a trust from God to be used for doing the things that need to be done, for self-improvement and enrichment, for service to others, and for the worship of God. We must render an account to God for how we use or misuse our time. We should not be overly concerned as to how much time God will give us, but rather see that we so use what God does give us as to please Him and accomplish the most for ourselves and others. Our prayer should be, so teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. And we can't destroy space or matter either. Now, a particular thing may be destroyed, but the matter still exists, even if the element is changed. So creation, is so limited, and that's why time, space, and matter are considered as divine qualities in a lot of cultures. 2. Time is a mystery. The good steward realizes that time is a great mystery, or as Carlyle said, it is a miracle. Arnold Bernay called time the daily miracle. We think of time as measured duration. We can easily imagine a period when duration began to be measured, or a period when the measuring instruments may be changed or thrown away, but we cannot imagine either the beginning or the end of duration. However far back we may go, we ask what was before, and however far in the future we may go, we ask what follows, time or duration. Like space is a miracle that only God can create or comprehend. 3. Time is inexorable. Time is inexorable. It cannot be stored up or brought back or hurried up or slowed down. It is now or never. We may sigh and sing, backward, turn backward, O time in your flight, but time never turns backward, or slows up, or stops. Well, in a way it does, in a way it doesn't, but you do have the theory of relativity, and there is proof of this. It's not just a hypothesis. It is we who, in our desires and imaginations, turn backward or hurry up. Time moves on with 24 hours in every day, 60 minutes in each hour, and 60 seconds in each minute. The French have a proverb: all the treasures of earth cannot bring back one lost moment. Just before his death, Andrew Carnegie is reported to have said that he would give $200 million for 10 years more of his life. 4. Time is the same to all. God is no respecter of persons. He shows no favoritism. In the daily giving of time, frequently people say, I do not have time. Ask somebody else who has more time than I have. But we all have exactly the same amount of time every day. Here is one place where we are all on a level. The difference is not in the amount of time we have, but in how we use or misuse the time we have. Mina R. Verspet said, time shares its seconds, moments, hours with every creature born, with each new day from morn to eve, and then from eve to morn. Each one is given equal share to make his choice of use. If he would from it profit gain, or mar it with abuse. 5. Time is supremely important. The good steward realizes the importance of time. Thomas A. Edison, the father of 100 time-saving, life-enriching inventions, said, time is the most important thing in the world. Benjamin Franklin said, dost thou love life? Then do not squander time, for that's the stuff life is made of. Another has said, the moments we forego, eternity itself cannot reprieve. 6. Time is short. Time flies. Time enough always proves to be little enough. Juvenal said, the noiseless foot of time steals swiftly by, and ere we dream of manhood, age is nigh. When Joseph presented his father Jacob to Pharaoh, the king was amazed at Jacob's great age and asked, how old art thou? Jacob replied, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Let me interject with a simple fact. If you look at people from the past 1,000 years, and even beyond that, you don't have any vegetarians that live that long. Certainly no vegans. I mean, as far as what we know. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. Genesis 47:9. If the 130 years of Jacob's life seem to him but a few days, how very short our lives are when we compare our lives with the lives of the patriarchs of old, or consider the need in our own lives and the needs of the world. And when we think of the never-ending ages of eternity and realize that our weal or woe in eternity depends upon this short life, life seems a watch in the night, or like a tale that's told. There is so much to be done, and so much time has already gone, and so little remains. We must redeem, that is, properly use the time that is left. But how? I said that instead of that is, and over here I said us, give us, but give as to please. 2. Getting the most out of time. In the light of the above obvious facts, the steward will ask, what can I do with the remainder of my time so as to please God and accomplish the most possible? He will listen to the advice of the wise men and will take warning from some who have made failures of their lives. Samuel Smiles wrote several books for young people telling how to make a success of life. The best and most popular of these books is entitled Self-Help. In this book, the author stresses the importance of using time and talent and seizing opportunities. He illustrates this thesis with anecdotes about 100 celebrated men. Smiles, among other things, laid stress upon how these successful men used their time, being careful to use every minute and seize every opportunity. Arnold Bennett, or is it Bennett? A novelist who amazed people by the quantity and the quality of his work, wrote an arresting book entitled How to Live on 24 Hours a Day. In this book, he stresses the importance of selection, system, and schedule. His thesis is this: one should plan one's work and work one's plan. In the light of what these and others have said and what we have seen and experienced, the following suggestions are offered. 1. Seek divine help. Recognize your stewardship of time. Daily seek divine guidance in the use of your time so that each day may see something worthwhile accomplished. It is said that Titus Vespasian, the Roman emperor, at the close of each day would try to recall some worthy deed he had done that day. If he could not, then he would walk the floor, wring his hands, and cry, "Friends, I've lost a day." George Eliot stressed the contrary idea as follows: if you sit down at set of sun and count the acts that you have done, and counting find one self-denying deed, one word that eased the heart of him who heard, one glance most kind that fell like sunshine where it went, then you may count that day well spent. The psalmist had the habit of praying at least 3 times a day, evening and morning, and at noon will I pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice. Psalm 55:17. Daniel opened his windows toward Jerusalem and prayed 3 times a day, whether the king liked it or not. Daniel 6:10. Bishop Ralph Cushman beautifully expresses this thought. The secret. I met God in the morning when my day was at its best, and his presence came like sunrise, like a glory in my breast. All day long, the presence lingered. All day long, he stayed with me, and we sailed in perfect calmness o'er a very troubled sea. Other ships were blown and battered, other ships were sore distressed, but the winds that seemed to drive them brought to us a peace and rest. And I thought of other mornings with a keen remorse of mine, when I too had loosed the moorings with the presence left behind. So I think I know the secret, learned from many a troubled way. You must seek him in the morning if you want him through the day. To this advice of Bishop Cushman should be added the words of J.C. Penney, the merchant prince. Actually, the challenge of living effectively makes it necessary to pray all through the day. 2. Budget your time. The good steward will make a schedule or budget his time. He will not do it so rigidly as to defeat the purpose, but so wisely that he can approach each day's work efficiently and without hurry or worry. So the secret is from Hilltop Verses and Prayers by Ralph Cushman, page 85. In making this time schedule, the good steward will carefully and perfectly provide for the necessities first, the conveniences second, and the luxuries last. He will not starve or stultify his soul or his mind in order to pamper his body. He will study his distinct personal duties and needs and provide accordingly. The good steward will probably decide that there should be 8 hours out of each 24 for sleep. Well, it varies per person. Some actually only need enough to get REM sleep, so about an hour and a half. Some need over 10. I've never needed over 10, but I've got over 10 because of medication. I've figured out you don't need pain medication. So went against doctor's advice with that one. I'm not giving medical advice here. It's just what was best for me. 8 for work and 8 for the other things that need to be done. And again, people, well, it depends on what you say with work, right? Because now people definitely work after work. 1. Sleep. People differ as to the number of hours needed for sleep. Each one should carefully calculate the amount necessary for doing his best work, then get that amount, no more, no less, be regular, go to sleep promptly, and get up on time. 2. Work. The amount of time to be devoted to work will depend upon the nature and the requirements of the work. A good steward will render good, faithful service, realizing that to waste an hour belonging to another is dishonest and inexcusable. 3. Devotions. Certainly, the good steward will need a special time for Bible reading, meditation, and prayer, whether 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or more. There should be some allotted time. There should be some system. The daily Bible reading suggested in the Sunday School and Training Union literature, with the comments given in Home Life and Open Windows, will be helpful. Many devotional books are available from any Baptist bookstore. 4. Culture. Then there should be a similar period for serious study or the reading of good literature. A few minutes a day given to this will enable one to read many fine books. Do not read cheap, second-rate books. Remember that every poor book you read means one good book you could never read. Some of the prices of books nowadays, But yeah, don't just get a book because it's cheap. Do not read simply good books, but best books. Do not borrow books, but buy them. Some of the library books can be gross. Do not mutilate books, but carefully mark them. Make your own index on the blank pages at the back. 5. Social life. Of course, we must have time for family and social life. No one should try to live for himself or to himself alone. But do not just spend this time in lounging, loafing, gossip, or getting about. Think about and talk about and plan for things that matter, things that will help you to be what you ought to be and do what you ought to do. 6. Recreation. Time must be had for play, exercise, and recreation. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. But be sure that it is recreation and not dissipation. There is a difference. Exercise in the open air, the brisk walk, the competitive games, etc., have much value. Beware of games of chance and of things that create abnormal appetites and waste valuable time. 7. Good deeds. Plan for some special Christian deed or service each day. the Boy Scout idea of a good deed. Every day is fine. There are the unfortunates, the shut-ins and the shout-outs, the sick, the aged, the little boys needing a big brother, the little girls needing a big sister, etc. A preacher's widow spent the last years of her life in visiting the sick, the lonely, and the unfortunate. One day she would go to the hospital and call on the sick, leaving a tract or the little bouquet of flowers. She would read a verse of scripture and have a word of prayer. Then on other days she would go to the jail or poorhouse and do the same. When she passed away, her pastor said she was the best known and best loved citizen of that city. Another lovely widow makes beautiful little flower arrangements and takes them to mothers with new babies, to the aged sick, and to sorrowing ones. You can find the needy if you stop and look and listen. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Jesus said so, and it is so. Well, things are on different planes, and blessed implies the spiritual plane. George Cooper said, "There are lonely hearts to cherish while the days are going by. There are weary souls who perish while the days are going by. If a smile we can renew as our journey we pursue, oh, the good we all may do while the days are going by." 8. Extras. Allowance should be made for extras and emergencies. We should provide for these just as we provide for a contingent fund. When we make out our financial budget, there will arise circumstances that make it impossible to carry out the schedules as we make them. So we need an emergency amount of time to enable us to catch up and go on. The important thing is to catch up, keep up, and go on. It is remarkable how much can be done in a little time if one gets at it promptly and works at it diligently and with the determination. 3. Don't waste time. There is nothing more precious than time, and nothing so greatly wasted. A good steward will try not to waste time. Waste is one of the besetting sins of people. There are many things that are not so wrong in themselves, but they take up so much time that could and should be used in better ways. One woman talked 2.5 hours over the phone. Another spent 15 hours one day playing bridge. I haven't seen the second, but I've seen the first. The author took a trip through the glorious Alps when some members of the party spent hours in playing rook. There is not anything wrong in playing rook, but it is wrong to play it when more important things ought to be done. Dr. J.B. Nash, addressing the American Association of Health and reporting on a recent Crossley survey, said that children spend 30 minutes more a week watching television than they spend in school, and at the time of life when they should be acquiring skills and interests valuable in later life. A newspaper reports that a woman living in the Bronx, New York, has completed after 15 years the task of copying the whole Bible in longhand. The woman thinks she has done a wonderful thing, the greatest in her life, but actually she has wasted years of valuable time that might have been used to better advantage in meditating upon great Bible teachings, committing them to memory, exemplifying them in her daily life, and carrying them to others in seeking to win them to Christ and His delightful service. Well, who's to say that that wasn't what was done by that? Definitely when you copy out things by hand, you learn them more than you would just plain reading them. How many hours are spent with television, radios, novels, comics, watching games, and gossiping, etc.? If time wasted were given to worthwhile things, one might acquire a speaking knowledge of a language, master an art, a science, a philosophy, or might develop skill as a musician or a typist, or become a workman that needeth not to be ashamed. We Americans are the greatest wasters in the world. Others could live on what we throw away, and the greatest waste is not in mere physical things, but in wasted time, wasted talents, and wasted lives. 4. Use the fragments. The good steward will care for the fragments of time. Jesus, after feeding the multitudes with the few loaves and fishes, commanded his disciples to gather up the fragments, that nothing be lost. John 6:12. If Jesus thought the disciples should gather up the fragments of bread, that nothing be lost, should we not care for the fragments of time for the same reason? We could become rich on what we throw away. John R. Sampe said, a preacher could master A.T. Robertson's Greek grammar and become a Greek scholar in 10 years. If he would study it faithfully 15 minutes a day. A clerk for a coal company used his spare time and became a certified accountant. He became the head of the firm. A.H. Strong cultivated a speaking acquaintance with a new science or an art every year just by using his spare moments. S.H. Ford, one of the most eloquent and learned men of the last generation, explained his mastery of poetry and oratory by saying that as he read the papers, he would clip striking poems and sayings and put them in his vest pocket. Then on the train, instead of straining his eyes reading books and papers, he would commit these choice bits to memory. In this way, he became a fluent and ready speaker. He was called the Little Giant and was the envy of all who heard him. 5. Don't put off. Edward Young called procrastination the theft of time and said, year after year it steals till all are fled. Most of us recall the despairing words heard during World War II. We arrive too late with too little. Our mothers were wont to say, never put off till tomorrow what you can do today. And our fathers told of the man who locked the barn door after the horse was stolen. The good steward will carefully list the things he is to do each day. He will check them off as he does them. If the night comes before all are done, he will put the ones left undone on the top of his list for the next day. Hesiod said, the procrastinating man is ever struggling with ruin. 3. Observing the Lord's Day. A good steward will want to observe the Lord's Day properly. In the Bible, this is sunset of Friday to sunset of Saturday. He does not want to be so pharisaical or puritanical as to rob the day of all joy. Well, puritanical means strictly following the commandment. That's what you want to be, but you don't want to, add on all that conservative interpretation is required upon you. Nor does he want to be so secular and worldly. Reading liberal. That he will destroy the meaning and the purpose of the day. He will recall the teaching and the example of Jesus and seek to do likewise. And by liberal, yes, there's the liberal giving and that sort of thing, but that's not what is meant in the context of fundamentalist, liberal, conservative reform. The liberal is the one that for their own interests, whether it's the popular opinion of them or whatever, that they let go of certain religious and family values. They fall short, as you could say. A day of rest. Jesus said the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Mark 2:27. The day was originally set apart as a day of rest. Man still needs a rest day. It has been found that more is accomplished where a day of rest is observed. The physical need is not for a particular day, but rather for a day or a seventh of the time. Now, they found that other things work. Some it's every 5 days, some every 13. There is no physical reason why one day should be observed rather than another, but for social, business, and religious reasons, it is well for all, as far as possible, to observe the same day. The Jews observe the biblical Sabbath, Saturday. The Muslimin, Friday. Well, a longer lunch break to attend a sermon, it's not the same thing. Most people in America observe Sunday. That is wise. Now, true religion isn't named after the teacher, so it wasn't called Mohammedans, it wasn't called Zoroastrianism, it wasn't called whatever. So in the roots, that's sort of an indication right there, right? If there are certain causes requiring Sunday work, then the workers should be given another day for rest. Of course, for obvious reasons, it is a pity that any should be deprived of their Sundays, according to Catholic tradition, not supported by the Bible. There was $1 million reward by somebody in the Portland area saying if there's anything that supports switching to Sunday, except the passages in the Bible that say to obey and believe whoever's in charge, he would give $1 million. Of course, there's no such passage in any version of the Bible, unless they've recently written one in, but definitely not in Greek or Latin or Aramaic or, A good steward will seek to remedy the situation. Well, Coptic was an Amharic and, what else were really old languages for biblical texts? If Sunday cannot be observed, he will see that an equivalent amount of time is had for rest and worship. So what does it mean that a good steward will seek to remedy the situation? Because certainly only in your own beliefs and deeds do you know that you're going to be able to have an effect. You can try to influence others, 2, a day of worship. Man needs Sunday for worship as well as for rest. In fact, rest and worship go together. Worship is restful. Jesus, as his custom was, went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, Luke 4:16. We surely need to worship God, study his word, and go to his house. We need a day especially set apart for this purpose. Christianity must have a church. Well, church in Greek isn't supported, actually. That's not what's being called for. It's a social gathering with more than family that has a political element. So, it refers to citizenship. So it's not just a hero shrine that you visit. A church must have a special day. People could worship without a church or a special day, but they do not and will not. No. Some things, if you can't do on your own, you're not going to do better in a group. 3, a day for kindly deeds. Jesus on the Sabbath day did many loving deeds. Recall the healing of the impotent man, John 5:1-9, and of the woman bent double, Luke 13:11-14. So, we should visit the lonely, the sick, the sad, the shut-ins, and the shut-outs. Have Bible classes, group meetings, visit institutions, each Sunday make a Sabbath day's journey toward the heavenly home. Keep the guidebook in hand and heart. This may seem to be work instead of rest, but it is a different kind of work, a work that is restful. It is different from secular work in kind, purpose, and results. Now, all these practices should be at least done meditatively. 4, suggested schedule. Don't lie in bed Sunday morning, and don't be up late Saturday night. Get up, stay up, clean up, dress up, get ready for a day of rest, worship, and kindly deeds. The various types of activity that can be and ought to be done on Sunday will be more restful than loitering, loafing, and lounging, are gadding, gossiping, and growling, or gardening, golfing, and joyriding. Set an example for family and friends. Let them see Jesus in you. Spend a bit more time at the family altar, reading, praying, counting your blessings, and getting ready for the day's duties. Go to Sunday school and stay for the worship services. Learn something, put it into practice, and pass it on. Make a few calls in the afternoon for Christ and his church. Paul went from door to door. Go to training union and take part. Study to know how and to do well. Remain for the evening service and try to win a soul to Christ. Tell your Christian experience. The only way to keep it is to give it away. Remember Paul's experience and custom. Don't spend the holy day in worldly pleasures, frivolity, business, or loafing. Don't turn the holy day into a holiday. Well, in this day and age, there's two types of holidays, and Christmas, Easter, and Halloween, just like the Catholic version of the Sabbath, they're not biblical. And they're not directly tied to some prophet saying that, just like they're trying to make it like Jesus was teaching to celebrate Hanukkah. And it's like, no, he was specifically against the conservative, as I've defined it, and the liberal. So therefore, he was going straight back to the basics, the Palarose. He was refurbishing the law. It was fundamentalism, going straight to the revelation and the inspiration. And of course, he had some of his own. The Bible says his doctrine is not his own doctrine, but of who sent him. Just like the rest of the prophets and messiahs listed. And yes, the Bible lists multiple messiahs. See Wordsworth. O day of rest and gladness, O day of joy and light, O balm of care and sadness, most beautiful, most bright, on thee, the high and lowly, bending before the throne, sing holy, 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 to the great three in one. On thee, at the creation, the light first had its birth. On thee, for our salvation, Christ rose from depths of earth. On thee, our Lord victorious, the Spirit sent from heaven, and thus on thee, most glorious, a triple light was given. And let us remember, Kadosh, 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 Yahweh Tzbaoth, Wakul. I forget the rest of the verse, but that thing in Isaiah. And Isaiah condemns the idea of a God, or Lord, Savior, beside God. So there's no second or third in divinity in the what they call the Old Testament. Only condemnation of those sorts of doctrines. Topics and questions for thought and discussion. 1. How do you spend your leisure time on a workday, on a holiday, on a Sunday? And let not the secular authorities define what the holidays are either. 2. What do we mean by budgeting one's time? What are the advantages? What are the difficulties? 3. Make a schedule for a workday, showing amounts of time you think you should spend in sleep, work, meals, devotions, culture, recreation, social life, extras. 4. Keep a daily record for a week, noting amount of time actually given to the above time items. 5. Make a schedule of time and activities for a Sunday. For a good steward, check your record next Sunday and see where you can do better. 6. Keep a record for a week and calculate the amount of time you wasted. 7. What plan have you for using your fragments of time? Good stewards outline. 1. An appreciation of time. 1, time is a gift. 2, time is a mystery. 3, time is inexorable. 4, time is the same to all. 4, time is the same to all. 5, time is supremely important. 6, time is short. 2, getting the most out of time. 1, seek divine help. 2, budget your time. 3, don't waste time. 4, use the fragments. 5, don't put off. 3, observing the Lord's Day. 1, a day of rest. 2, a day of worship. 3, a day for kindly deeds. 4, a suggested schedule. And another thing that didn't change in the Bible is the food laws. Because people think, oh, you can eat pork and carry on and all sorts of things because of Jesus on the cross or something like that. And it's like, no, that's not the biblical position. The interpretation of that dream is right there. And it also teaches you that just because you see something in a dream doesn't mean that that's the literal application of it. Now, sometimes it's literally what it is, but it doesn't mean you should act out everything in your dreams. And, inexorable is when you're not breathing as well in the morning, it's not as easy to pronounce some of these terms, but I think I've said everything clearly enough.